Is it time to go full electric with your overland camping setup? Well, today I'm going to do a little bit of testing. Behind me is my 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser, and it has a hybrid system. And I'm curious to know what the strengths and the weaknesses are of using the internal battery system to help power things like an induction stove so I don't have to have propane anymore, to use an electric coffee pot instead of having my standard stovetop one, which takes a long time to percolate, and how I can maximize using my electric fridge with this system. So today we're going to kind of do some testing and we'll just see what this Toyota Land Cruiser hybrid system is capable of. Now, before we start plugging things in and seeing how well this battery works, let's talk a little bit specifically about what's inside the Land Cruiser. So it has a 1.87 kilowatt nickel hydride battery. This is not a lithium battery, and I'm not sure why Toyota still uses nickel hydride. Maybe it's just easier to get the components to build those batteries, or maybe it's because they've been doing this for almost 2 decades and they know that's reliable. But this is what we have, 1.87 kilowatts. In the world of hybrid vehicles is pretty good, but in the world of electric vehicles, well, it's pretty small. And if you think about the Jeep Wrangler 4xe, that has a 17 kilowatt battery. And the Rivian R1S, the base model, has a 92 kilowatt battery. Now, the Wrangler can drive about 22 miles on full electric, and the Rivian is a full electric vehicle, and that thing can drive probably 250 miles, whereas the Land Cruiser, you can putt-putt around the parking lot in full electric mode and drive downhill in electric mode, but most of the time the engine is running and the electric motor is just kind of helping scoot things along. Right now, the battery is showing 5 out of 8 bars. And it's interesting because the Land Cruiser doesn't have this really involved display about the battery system. You know, sometimes this hybrid vehicles will tell you how much power they're putting out, the exact percentages, how much they're consuming. It's a very small little gauge here. You barely know that this vehicle is a hybrid. So we only have 5 out of 8 bars. So basically what that means is we're somewhere around 60 to 65%. It doesn't tell me exactly of that 1.87 kilowatts. So that's kind of our starting point. I have only seen the battery at full 8 bars a couple times. Most of the time it's anywhere between 3 and 5. Now in the back inside is where our battery for the hybrid system lives. Now it takes up quite a bit of storage because the entire rear section back here is raised up 4 inches. Now, you do get a little bit of storage here and on the side and in the front, but back here, right here in the middle, is where that battery lives. And I want to mention something that several people are confused about, and I was initially confused about, and that's there's a little sticker down here that says you cannot put more than 60 kilograms of weight on here, which is like 120 pounds. Well, that actually only refers to this flimsy little storage bin lid right here. It doesn't refer to the whole thing, and I can tell you that I weigh more than 60 kilograms and I can sit on here and it's fine. But just knowing that you do lose some storage back here, which is a little bit of a disappointment. Trying to figure out how I'm going to build this out, and it would be nice if this was flush. Now, on the side here, we have our 120 volt, 2400 watt inverter. That is a lot of power that you can get out of this thing. Now, there's some kind of inverter that's attached to the battery because the battery, I believe, is a 288 volt system that's converting all that power to come out here to 120 volts at 2400 watts. Now look, I already know that the coffee pot I'm going to use maxes out at about 800 watts. And the induction stove maxes out at about 1400 watts, but we need to see how much of that power is usable, and so we're going to test that out. But the really cool thing is you could attach an extension cord if you needed to. If you had a power outage in your house, you could run an extension cord into your house. You could run your fridge, your TV, your computer. You could charge things up. I mean, the Land Cruiser can actually act as a generator. That's pretty interesting. So we're going to plug some things in and we're going to see how it behaves when we start making some coffee. Now on this side is a little storage compartment where our 12-volt battery is. It is not in the engine bay, it's back here, which there's some pros and cons to that. Because we'll be doing a lot of build-out stuff and need some of that 12-volt power, having it back here is going to make it more accessible, but running lights and winch and all that kind of stuff, which you would normally do in the engine bay, well, I got to figure that out. I don't even know how we're going to do that yet. Hopefully I don't have to run wires all the way back here, but we may have to do that. Running things like the refrigerator directly off of this just makes a little more sense, because when you run an inverter like you do on this side, you actually consume more power. So typically you want to run a refrigerator on 12 volt versus 120 volts because it actually doesn't use quite as much power. But the question is, if I'm plugging my refrigerator into this 12 volt system, how is that going to perform? So we'll talk a little bit about that. But right now, what do you say we just make some coffee and see if this thing works? All right, I've filled up the percolator with coffee and water, and a little shameless plug, I am using the TrailRecon Adventure Blend coffee, which has a little bit of hint of maple and bourbon, and it is a coarse ground, which is perfect for a percolator. If you'd like to support the channel, I will leave a link down below. Now, for years and years, I have used a standard stovetop percolator like this, and I love percolated coffee. It's just something about that at camp. It's just, I just love the flavor and the aroma. But look, on a very cold morning, having this sitting on a gas stove takes a long time to brew. I mean, I've had it take 15 to 20 minutes sometimes to brew a pot of coffee on a propane stove. Over the last couple months, I've been experimenting with electric percolators. I've been using it on the trailer, and I've been plugging it into my battery pack just to kind of see how this works, and it brews extremely fast. Now, it's a little power hungry though, so there's a little bit of compromise, but I can have a good cup of coffee ready pretty quick with one of these. So let's plug this in, and before I can turn this on, I actually need to start the truck. Now that 2400 watt outlet back there is not live all the time. You have to come up here to the front and push a button to turn it on, but that button won't turn on unless the actual Land Cruiser is turned on. So you have to start the Land Cruiser. Now, typically when you start the Land Cruiser, it will start and it will idle for a moment, and then it will just shut the engine off and the battery will run everything. The negative with that is I wake up pretty early in the morning. I'm usually up first at camp, and the last thing I want to do is kind of start the vehicle. I don't know, actually I haven't experienced it enough that when you turn the vehicle on, typically it's going to run and then it will shut off. It actually asks you if it's parked for more than an hour, would you like the hybrid battery system to stay on? Now that it's running, hopefully it'll stop running and just the battery system will go on, and then we're going to turn on that 120 volt system there. It just shut off. So now we can turn on that outlet back there and make that live, and then we'll go make some coffee and see how it does. All right, now that the Land Cruiser is in hybrid mode, I did go ahead and shut off the air conditioner because that will continue to run while it's in this mode, which is actually kind of nice. If you're like sleeping in here or something on a hot night, you could actually turn the air on for a little bit. But all that is off to try to save as much battery as possible. I've plugged in the coffee pot, and I'm going to time it just for fun. I've actually never timed how long it takes to make a percolated pot of electric coffee. So that is turned on. Hit start. And we'll see how this goes. Now, one thing to note is there's just this little bit of buzzing noise. And, you know, for me, when I get up in the morning, I'm usually the first one up at camp, and I try to be as quiet as possible. So I don't want vehicles to start running, and I think this humming noise would be fine, but I try to really be pretty quiet. All right, look at that. It's already started to percolate. The electric is so much faster. All right, we're at the 5.5 minute mark, and I think this is almost done. We'll know when this blue light comes on, but I went and checked the gauge cluster, and our little battery gauge is now reading 4 out of 8 bars. So we've used a little bit of this battery already, and in the center armrest, you can hear it's almost like there's a fan running there, something kind of loud. It's louder inside the vehicle than it is outside the vehicle, but it's definitely making some noise. It's probably some kind of cooling fan or something keeping the inverter or whatever the system is there cool, because we're pulling a lot of juice at the moment. There it is. 6 minutes and 40 seconds, and the Land Cruiser turned on. Just went and checked and it's down to 3 bars. So that must be like the threshold when the vehicle knows to restart and start charging the battery. Remember, we're pulling about 800 watts here and it's been running for, well, it was running for 6.5 minutes. We're about 745 right now. So it's pulling a good amount of power out of that 1.87 kilowatt battery. And remember, we were only at about 62, 65% to start with. So we didn't even have a fully charged battery. All right, 8 minutes and 20 seconds, and we've got a blue light and we've got a full pot of coffee. Vehicle is still running, which again, if it's quiet morning out at camp, I don't really want my vehicle starting up. So that may not be super practical. I might have to figure out an alternative. But now what I want to know is, can we like cook with this 2400 watt inverter? That's a pretty good cup of coffee I just brewed in the back of my Land Cruiser. Now look, I hope that somebody else out there thinks this is interesting. I'm actually pretty fascinated about this. There's probably like 3 people. Okay, one thing to note was that after I turned the coffee pot off, the Land Cruiser continued to run for about 3.5 minutes, and then it shut off and went back into all electric hybrid mode again. So I have since shut it off. When I shut it off, it was only showing 3 out of 8 bars. So now what I want to do is I want to plug in the induction stove and just boil a little bit of water. And I know this is going to work, but I'm just curious on how the Land Cruiser is going to behave, what our battery is going to be. And look, I've been experimenting with induction cooking a lot lately, and I really like it. When it's cold, when it's windy, you don't have to worry about flames going out. And plus, the other thing is you don't have to worry about bringing propane with you. And I always bring like extra bottles of propane because you never want to run out, where if you have electricity, you're not going to run out. Well, you shouldn't run out anyway, because the vehicle will start, or you'll have solar or whatever. They're pretty good options. And what's great is these things are really inexpensive. You can pick one of these up for about $45 to $65 depending on the model. And this one is only 1400 watts. There are some that go up to like 1800 and 2000 watts. The important thing about induction though, and some people don't understand this, is you have to have a pot or a pan that is a ferrous metal. And what that means is it's magnetic. So if a magnet sticks to it, you know it will cook on the induction stovetop. Now the side of this is not ferrous metal, but the bottom is ferrous metal, so this will work just fine. So what I'm going to do is, again, I know this is going to work, but I just want to see how this is going to behave. Plug this in and turn it on. All right, I started the Land Cruiser. It ran for about 15 seconds, and then it went into all electric mode, and there's only 3 out of the 8 bars of the battery showing. So something tells me that as soon as I fire up this induction stove, that vehicle is going to start up probably pretty quickly after doing that. All right, now I'm just going to put this at the highest setting here and just let it roll. And we're going to start a timer, and we'll just see how long until the vehicle starts up. Nothing earth-shattering there in what we did today. I just wanted to kind of go through the motions and understand how that would work. And I think practically for me, that using that onboard inverter at camp is just not going to be something I'm going to do. So what I need to figure out is what my other option is. Now, I could do something like a dedicated battery pack system like this. I've actually had this for like 4 years. I bought this and I've just used this over and over. I moved it from vehicle to vehicle. This is a Goal Zero 1500, and it's got a 2000 watt inverter built into it. And so it will easily power those. And the great thing about this is it's all just ready to go. I just set it in the vehicle and I don't have to worry about it. I can plug it in, or I can plug it into a regular cigarette lighter, or I can hook it up to solar while I'm at camp. The challenge with this though is it's this big box, right? And where if I did something custom, where I bought a battery and I bought a solar controller and an inverter and a BC to DC charger, I can stuff that stuff in underneath seats and pockets and all kinds of little areas. And so I don't know. I got to think about that a little bit more. But what I need to do first is build out the storage system. And once the storage system is built out, which we will be doing very soon, I'll probably put this in there initially, and then I will figure out if I want to change it up. But this should meet the mark for a little while. Now, we need to talk about the fridge and the 12 volt system. So I'm going to be running lights. I'm going to be running a winch. I'm going to be running an air compressor and a 12 volt fridge. And all of that stuff the wiring needs to be organized, and it needs to get to that 12 volt battery, which is in the back. And so I need to figure out what the best way to do that is. Can I get an S-Pod or a Shift Pros and mount that under the hood and then run the wires? Or do I mount those in there in the back and then run wires from the front to the rear? I don't know what that looks like. I have to think through that a little bit. All right, really quick, as I was editing the video, I needed to interject something here that I wanted to talk about the 12 volt system that I didn't mention, and that is, while the vehicle is off, you can drain this entire 12 volt battery. It's not until you turn the vehicle on that the hybrid system will charge that 12 volt battery. So if I'm running a fridge or any other accessories, it could totally deplete that battery. Now the good thing is that your refrigerators typically have what's called a low voltage cutout. And so you can set it at like 11.5 volts and the fridge will shut off and it won't deplete the battery. The problem with that is that you may actually end up spoiling your food. So it's something to have to think about. But I wanted to mention that no, this 12 volt system is not staying fully charged unless the vehicle is running. All right, back to now what I was talking about. So I think what I'm going to do is do something like this. This is a good to go cigarette lighter. It's got 3 cigarette lighters, got a little on off button, a couple USB switches. It's already pre-fused, and you just hook this up to the battery, and then I can hook up my 12 volt fridge directly to this. This has got little adhesives on here, and I can mount this. I mean, I can put this in the cup holder that's in the back, honestly, and not have to worry about it. So I may do this initially until I figure out what I'm going to do that's a little more custom. And something like this is what I'm thinking. And I like this because it's flush mounted and you can do multiple of these. So this has a little on-off switch. It's got a cigarette lighter. You could add a USB-C if you wanted. And it's got a little meter here which will tell you how your battery power is doing. Problem with this is though, you need to drill holes and screw this in and find a place to do it. I've already kind of investigated a little bit and there's plenty of places that this will fit and actually look pretty clean. But again, I need to figure out the storage system. And the other thing is that I'm not sure that we're going to go with this style of fridge with the storage system we're doing. I mentioned that platform sits up about 4 inches, and then we're going to figure out some kind of drawers, and we need to figure out a fridge. And if I put this fridge on top of that 4-inch system and then drawers, well, getting in and out of here might be a challenge. So we might do something a little different this time. Still playing through all this, and I'm just talking this out with you guys, and maybe some of you guys have some different ideas that I can take from, because I'm really excited to hear what your thoughts are on this project. I think it's fun, guys. There's a lot that I want to do with this, and a lot of unknown still, and I actually enjoy thinking through all this stuff. To me, this isn't stressful. This is fun. It's like putting a puzzle together, and I'm excited to make this build come alive. So there you have it. I hope you've had fun just hanging out with me here in the garage and boiling water and making coffee. Yeah, we did that. All right, guys, make sure you check us out over at TrailRecon.com. And until next time, safe travels.